Kanjizai is not free. Cognitive processing at this level is chakra hungry and mentally exhausting. Even for Madara, there is a biological ceiling. After 24 hours of continuous combat at the Valley of the End, Madara hit system exhaustion. His Kanjizai shut down. His perception reverted to ordinary human sight, and in that moment, the man who could see everything saw nothing. With his Truth Finder offline, Madara fell for the very deception his Mangekyo was designed to prevent. A wood clone, the simplest trick in Hashirama's arsenal. Madara's legendary blind spot, created by trauma, erased by Kanjizai, returned the moment his chakra reserves collapsed, and Hashirama struck the opening Madara could no longer perceive. Kanjizai isn't a passive psychic power, it's a data processing engine. And like any engine, it requires high-quality fuel. This software can only run when the Sharingan, or higher, is active. This is why Madara fell at the Valley of the End. In those final moments, exhausted, and with his eyes reverted to their base state, he was blind to the truth. Without the Sharingan's ability to see chakra color and flow, the Kanjizai software had no data to process. He looked at a wood clone with normal human eyes and saw a man. It was the only time his discernment failed him, not because his mind wasn't ready, but because his hardware was offline. Even with his eyes off at the moment of death, Madara was still the ultimate strategist. He had already programmed an Izanagi into his right eye, set to activate after his death. He knew that if his stamina failed and his understanding went dark, he needed a literal reset button. If Madara truly had the time rewind ability from the games, he could have undone the stab instantly, but he couldn't. He had to die, and rely on the reality warping genjutsu to return. The manga makes it clear, Madara did not rewind time, he prepared for failure. The Rinnegan is often described as the evolution of the Sharingan, but evolution comes with a biological cost. While the Kanjizai rewired Madara's brain to operate at a higher level, allowing him to discern the truth even with a base 3 Tomoe, Sharingan, or the Rinnegan active, it is not an infinite resource. It is a software that requires neural bandwidth. Think of the Rinnegan as an operating system designed for godlike output. Gravity manipulation, limbo clones, and planetary scale jutsu. These processes are heavy. They consume the brain's primary focus. While Madara can still discern wood clones with the Rinnegan, a task his brain has mastered over decades of war, he cannot run the Kanjizai at 100% efficiency while his hardware is being pushed to the absolute limit. This is the key to understanding Madara's final moment. When he ascended to cast the Infinite Tsukuyomi, he wasn't just using a jutsu. He was processing the chakra and consciousness of every living being on the planet. At that moment, the Rinne Sharingan was consuming every available cycle of his neural bandwidth. The Kanjizai software didn't disappear, but it was throttled. It was pushed to the background to make room for the Infinite Tsukuyomi. For the first time in his life, Madara's absolute discernment was offline. He could see the world, but he could no longer discern the shadow standing directly behind him. He traded the understanding that made him a shinobi for the power that made him a god. And in that transition, he became vulnerable to the only thing his software wasn't running a diagnostic on, his own ally. Madara spent years deciphering the Uchiha stone tablet with his advanced eyes. He believed he was uncovering the sage's truth, but the tablet had been rewritten by Black Zetsu. Madara's understanding was perfect. The data source was corrupted. He was a supercomputer running a flawless program on a virus-infected file. There is a direct parallel between the two defining defeats of Madara's life. At the Valley of the End, his eyes were off, he was exhausted, and he was stabbed by his rival. In the Fourth War, he was at his peak, and he believed he had won, and he was stabbed by his own will. In both cases, Madara, the man who could see everything, failed to see what was right behind him. We've seen the god-tier processing of the Kanjizai, and we've seen the human bottlenecks that led to Madara's downfall. Whether it was the hardware failing at the Valley of the End, or the software being throttled by the Infinite Tsukuyomi, we now know that even absolute discernment has its limits. But even with the biology mapped out, there are still skeptics. Some say Madara was just a master of sensing. Others claim it was just plot armor for the protagonist. In our final video, we are going to put those counter theories to the test. We're going to look at why sensory ninjutsu doesn't explain the straight tomoe, we'll debunk the most common fan theories that try to replace the Kanjizai, and finally, we'll see how this neural architecture changed the Naruto world building forever. But before we reach the conclusion, I want to hear your final thoughts on the failures. Now that you've seen the bandwidth and the hardware explanation, do you feel better about the Zetsu's backstab, or do you still think it's a plot hole? Let's settle in the comments. If this series has helped you see Madara as a complex biological machine, rather than just a magic shinobi, hit that like button. And if you made it this far, subscribe and hit the bell. We've come through the lore, the biology, and the evidence. Now it's time for the final verdict. The science is set. The evidence is in. Click right here for the final conclusion and theory debunking. Let's finish the story of the Uchiha's greatest mind.